Imagine, just for a second, that the water of Lake Texcoco is gently lapping right against the walls of your small reed house. It's not just water, you know. It's basically the heartbeat of what is arguably the world's most beautiful city in the 1400s, Tenochtitlan. The air all around you is thick. If you take a really deep breath right now, you can smell it. The damp earth, the sweet, heavy scent of blooming lilies drifting over from the floating gardens, all perfectly mixed with the sharp, crackling aroma of wood smoke. We are dropping right into the sensory reality of a world that is fermenting, rotting, and just incredibly alive.
So welcome to today's explainer. We are going to be completely stripping away that glamorous mythology you might be used to hearing about. We aren't going to spend time talking about emperors parading around in feathered cloaks or the grand, sweeping decrees of kings. Instead, we're looking at the gritty, completely unfiltered reality of the Aztec farmer. We're talking about the invisible labor, the absolutely exhausted muscles, and the precise, grueling math that literally fueled and built an entire empire right in the middle of a lake. Here's our roadmap for today as we map out a brutal 12-hour shift. We'll kick things off at 5 a.m. with pre-dawn wakefulness, push our way through midday labor at 12 p.m., and finally make that exhausted sunset return at 7 p.m. Let's start with Section 1, Dawn on the Floating Gardens. You open your eyes and it's just that gray pre-dawn light. There's no comfy mattress here. You are lying on a thin, scratchy reed mat spread directly over a floor of packed earth. And you're sharing this tiny, drafty space with your wife and 3 kids. You definitely don't need an alarm clock. Your body is simply hardwired to wake up the exact moment that first little sliver of gray light seeps through the gaps in your walls. Every single time you shift your weight, the dried straw underneath you just crackles.
Now, as you sit up slowly on that mat, your back is just throbbing with what was known as a carpenter's ache. It's this dull, constant pain you get from hauling mud from the lake bed for 12 solid hours the day before. History has actually recorded this exact type of pain across centuries and across continents. It's just that universal physical toll of hard manual labor, right? It's a pretty heavy reminder that while the era is totally different, the physical cost of building a civilization remains brutally, undeniably the same.
Let's quickly define exactly where it is you're working. These are the Chinampas. We love to romanticize them as floating gardens, but honestly, that's kinda underselling it. This isn't just casually tossing some seeds in the dirt. Actually, scratch that. It's basically high-level engineering. This is a highly complex lake-based agricultural system. As a Chinampa farmer, your day-to-day involves the precise, grueling math of maintaining plots of land built right into the shallow lake bed. You are constantly, and I mean constantly, balancing water levels, soil fertility, and structural integrity. Moving on to Section 2, the breakfast of survival. Let's head over to the central hearth. The embers from last night's fire are still smoldering, and that smell of wood smoke just fills your lungs. This is not a leisurely morning meal. Everything you put in your body right now has a specific, highly functional purpose, just to get you through the massive physical output you're going to need before the sun even fully rises.
Your absolutely crucial morning fuel is atoll. It's this thick, warm porridge made from ground maize. Now, while some 19th century accounts of the poor talk about them drinking tea that tasted like lye, your morning meal is incredibly dense. Atoll acts as your backbone. You have to eat it slowly, chewing thoroughly, because this dense, starchy fuel is literally the only thing standing between you and collapsing face first in the mud by mid-morning. Every single bite is a hard-earned investment in just surviving the day.
All right, Section 3, the 1450 poverty penalty. We are stepping into the brutal economic reality of your life now to look at why you have to ration that atoll so incredibly carefully.
Because it's not just the physical labor weighing you down, it's the heavy, undeniable mathematical burden of the society you live in. You are farming this incredible abundance of food, but that abundance, it doesn't belong to you.
The brutal reality here is the concept of paying more just to survive. Think of a 19th century widow who had to pay a huge premium for coal simply because she was too poor to buy it in bulk. As an Aztec farmer, you are paying your own penalty through the empire's strict tribute system. You don't truly own those Chinampas you're breaking your back to maintain. You are entirely trapped in an economic loop that constantly penalizes you for being stuck at the bottom of the social ladder.
When we break down the distribution of your crop yield, it's staggering. A massive portion of your maize, beans, and squash goes straight to the emperor and the local nobles as tribute. What is left over, that tiny little fraction, well, that's your survival cash. And you have to stretch that limited supply all the way until the next harvest. Doing this math means you are perpetually, constantly just one bad season, one freak flood, or one drought away from real, life-threatening trouble. Let's look at Section 4, Midday Labor and Liquid Bread. By now, the sun is way past just being a light in the sky. It is a physical, heavy weight pressing down on your shoulders. You are totally covered in lake mud, you've been tending to the maize for hours, and your energy is basically at zero. It's time for your main meal of the day, eaten right out there in the sweltering heat of the floating gardens.
You open up your ration bag, and here's what you're working with: a stack of cold tortillas and a handful of chili peppers. That's the whole meal. It's this incredibly meager combination of starch and spice. And you're not eating it for pleasure, you're eating it because the heavy starch just sits in your stomach and pretends you are full, while the spice from the peppers gives you a brief, necessary jolt to the senses to keep you awake.
This diet has been called the absolute minimum that keeps a human being walking. I really want you to think about that for a second. You are hauling wet, extremely heavy lake mud, performing intense manual agricultural labor under a baking sun, and your body is quite literally running on fumes. This is the harsh, everyday reality of fueling the invisible workforce of Tenochtitlan. But listen, starch alone isn't going to rebuild torn muscle, right? You need protein. Enter ahuatle. These are insect eggs harvested directly from the lake, and they're often eaten alongside dried grasshoppers. It is a highly resourceful, totally lake-derived source of nutrition. You basically have to take whatever the environment gives you, scraping your survival right off the surface of the water you work in all day.
But notice the extreme contrast in how this food is viewed. For the nobles lounging around the center of the city, ahuatl is this high-status, fancy delicacy. But for you, the farmer, it is liquid bread. It is practically medicine disguised as food. You aren't eating it to savor the complex flavors, you're choking it down because it gives you the specific caloric strength to work just a little bit longer on less food. It's the exact same ingredient, but existing in two entirely different universes of survival. Finally, Section 5, the invisible patchwork underneath. As the sun finally sets over those volcanic peaks in the distance, your 12-hour shift is over. You head home, and your hands are permanently stained with this deep lake grime that literally no amount of water will ever fully wash away. You are walking back carrying the literal weight of an entire empire on your aching back. And here lies the great historical disconnect. Up in the great temple, the high priests look out over Tenochtitlan and they just see divine order. They see a perfect, symmetrical city blessed by the gods. But they completely miss the invisible patchwork underneath it all. They don't see the stained hands, the aching backs, or the grueling daily math that actually keeps their divine city floating. So, you finally sit down in your reed house. Your supper tonight is a super thin pottage of beans and squash.
It's essentially cabbage water soup. Mostly liquid, offering very few calories, but it is warm. And honestly, that warmth is just enough to settle your exhausted spirit before you lie right back down on that crackling straw mat to do the whole thing all over again tomorrow.
History books always seem to remember the names of the kings, the emperors, and the conquerors. But it really begs the question, who is the true heartbeat of an empire? Is it the man standing up high in the feathered cloak, or is it the survivor down in the mud who knows the price of every single ear of corn and the exact crushing weight of a mud bucket? Think about that invisible labor the next time you look at a monument of the past. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to uncover the structured truths behind the history we thought we knew.